Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 133. Chapter 133. Nicholas Rostov meanwhile remained at his post, waiting for the wolf. By the way the hunt approached and receded, by the cries of the dogs whose notes were familiar to him, by the way the voices of the huntsmen approached, receded, and rose, he realized what was happening at the copse. He knew that young and old wolves were there, that the hounds had separated into two packs, that somewhere a wolf was being chased, and that something had gone wrong. He expected the wolf to come his way at any moment. He made thousands of different conjectures as to where and from what side the beast would come, and how he would set upon it. Hope alternated with despair. Several times he addressed a prayer to God that the wolf should come to his way. He prayed with that passionate and shamefaced feeling with which men pray at moments of great excitement arising from trivial causes. "What would it be to thee to do this for me?" he said to God. "I know thou art great, and that it is a sin to ask this of thee, but for God's sake do let the wolf come my way, and let Carré spring at it, in sight of Uncle who is watching from over there, and seize it by the throat in a death grip." 1,000 times during that half hour Rostov cast eager and restless glances over the edge of the wood, with the two scraggy oaks rising above the aspen undergrowth, and the gully with its water-worn side, and Uncle's cap just visible above the bush on his right. "No, I shan't have such luck," thought Rostov. "Yet what it wouldn't be worth. It is not to be. Everywhere, at cards and in war, I am always unlucky." Memories of Austerlitz and Dolokhov flashed rapidly and clearly through his mind. "Only once in my life to get an old wolf, I want only that," thought he, straining eyes and ears, and looking to the left, and then to the right, and listening to the slightest variation of note in the cries of the dogs. Again he looked to the right and saw something running toward him across the deserted field. "No, it can't be," thought Rostov, taking a deep breath, as a man does at the coming of something long hoped for. The height of happiness was reached, and so simply, without warning or noise or display, that Rostov could not believe his eyes, and remained in doubt for over a second. The wolf ran forward and jumped heavily over a gully that lay in her path. She was an old animal with a gray back and a big, reddish belly. She ran without hurry, evidently feeling sure that no one saw her. Rostov, holding his breath, looked round at the Borzois. They stood or lay not seeing the wolf, or understanding the situation. Old Carré had turned his head, and was angrily searching for fleas, baring his yellow teeth and snapping at his hind legs. "Uli, uli, uli, uli," whispered Rostov, pouting his lips. The Borzois jumped up, jerking the rings of the leashes and pricking their ears. Carré finished scratching his hindquarters and, cocking his ears, got up with quivering tail from which tufts of matted hair hung down. "Shall I loose them or not?" Nicholas asked himself as the wolf approached him coming from the copse. Suddenly, the wolf's whole physiognomy changed. She shuddered, seeing what she had probably never seen before, human eyes fixed upon her, and turning her head a little towards Rostov, she paused. "Back or forward? No matter. Forward," the wolf seemed to say to herself, and she moved forward, without again looking around, and with a quiet, long, easy, yet resolute hope. "Uli, uli, uli, uli," cried Nicholas, in a voice not his own. And of its own accord, his good horse darted headlong downhill, leaping over gullies to head off the wolf, and the borzois passed it, running faster still. Nicholas did not hear his own cry, nor feel that he was galloping, nor see the borzois, nor the ground over which he went. He saw only the wolf, who, increasing her speed, bounded on in the same direction along the hollow. The first to come into view was Milka, with her black markings and powerful quarters, gaining upon the wolf. Nearer and nearer. Now she was ahead of it, but the wolf turned its head to face her, and instead of putting on speed, as she usually did, Milka suddenly raised her tail and stiffened her forelegs. "Uli, uli, 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 uli," shouted Nicholas. The reddish Loboyim rushed forward from behind Milka, sprang impetuously at the wolf, and seized it by its hindquarters, but immediately jumped aside in terror. The wolf crouched, gnashed her teeth, and again rose and bounded forward, followed at the distance of a couple of feet by all the borzois, who did not get any closer to her. "She'll get away. Nah, it's impossible," thought Nicholas, still shouting with a hoarse voice. "Hooray! Uli, 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 uli," he shouted, looking around for the old borzoi, who was now his only hope. Karay, with all the strength age had left him, stretched himself to the utmost, and watching the wolf, galloped heavily aside to intercept it. But the quickness of the wolf's lope and the borzoi's slower pace made it plain that Karay had miscalculated. Nicholas could already see not far in front of him the wood where the wolf would certainly escape, should she reach it. But coming towards him, he saw hounds and a huntsman galloping almost straight at the wolf. There was still hope. A long, yellowish young borzoi, one Nicholas did not know, from another leash, rushed impetuously at the wolf from in front and almost knocked her over. But the wolf jumped up more quickly than anyone could have expected, and gnashing her teeth flew at the yellowish borzoi, which, with a piercing yelp, fell with its head on the ground, bleeding from a gash in its side. "Karay, old fellow!" wailed Nicholas. Thanks to the delay caused by this crossing of the wolf's path, the old dog, with its felted hair hanging from its thigh, was within 5 paces of it. As if aware of her danger, the wolf turned her eyes on Karay, tucked her tail yet further between her legs, and increased her speed. But here Nicholas only saw that something happened to Karay. The borzoi was suddenly on the wolf, and they rolled together down into a gully just in front of them. That instant, when Nicholas saw the wolf struggling in the gully with the dogs, while from under them could be seen the gray hair and outstretched hind leg, and her frightened choking head, with her ears laid back, Karay was pinning her by the throat, this was the happiest moment of Rostov's life. With his hand on his saddle bow, he was ready to dismount and stab the wolf, when she suddenly thrust her head up from among that mass of dogs, and then her forepaws were on the edge of the gully. She clicked her teeth. Karay no longer had her by the throat, leaped with a movement of her hind legs out of the gully, and having disengaged himself from the dogs, with tail tucked in again, went forward. Karay, his hair bristling and probably bruised or wounded, climbed with difficulty out of the gully. "Oh, my God, why?" Nicholas cried in despair. Uncle's huntsman was galloping from the other side across the wolf's path, and his borzois once more stopped the animal's advance. She was again hemmed in. Nicholas and his attendant, with Uncle and his huntsman, were all riding around the wolf, crying "Yuli, yuli, 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 yuli," shouting and preparing to dismount each moment that the wolf crouched back, and starting forward again every time she shook herself and moved toward the wood where she would be safe. Already, at the beginning of this chase, Daniel, hearing the call, had rushed out from the wood. He saw Karay seize the wolf, and checked his horse, supposing the affair to be over. But when he saw that the huntsman did not dismount, and that the wolf shook herself and ran for safety, Daniel set his chestnut galloping, not at the wolf, but straight towards the wood, just as Karay had cut the animal off. As a result of this, he galloped up to the wolf just when she had been stopped a second time by Uncle's borzois. Daniel galloped up silently, holding a naked dagger in his left hand, and thrashing the laboring sides of his chestnut horse with his whip as if it were a flail. Nicholas neither saw nor heard Daniel until the chestnut, breathing heavily, panted past him, and he heard the fall of a body, and saw Daniel lying on the wolf's back among the dogs, trying to seize her by the ears. It was evident to the dogs, the hunters, and to the wolf herself that all was now over. The terrified wolf pressed back her ears and tried to rise, but the borzoi stuck to her. Daniel rose a little, took a step, and with his whole weight, as if lying down to rest, fell on the wolf, seized her by the ears. Nicholas was about to stab her, but Daniel whispered, "Don't, we'll gag her," and changing his position, set his foot on the wolf's neck. A stick was thrust between her jaws, and she was fastened with a leash, as if bridled. Her legs were bound together, and Daniel rolled her over once or twice from side to side. With happy, exhausted faces, they laid the old wolf, alive, on a shying and snorting horse, and accompanied by the dogs yelping at her, took her to the place where they were all to meet. The hounds had killed 2 of the cubs and the borzois 3. The huntsmen assembled with their booty and their stories, and all came to look at the wolf, which, with her broad-browed head hanging down and the bitten stick between her jaws, gazed with great glassy eyes at this crowd of dogs and the men surrounding her. When she was touched, she jerked her bound legs and looked wildly, yet simply, at everybody. Old Count Rostov also rode up and touched the wolf. "Oh, what a formidable one," said he. "A formidable one, eh?" he asked Daniel, who was standing near. "Yes, Your Excellency," answered Daniel, quickly doffing his cap. The Count remembered the wolf he had let slip in his encounter with Daniel. "Ah, but you are a crusty fellow, friend," said the Count. For sole reply, Daniel gave him a shy, childlike, meek, and amiable smile. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 133. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 133. It raineth every day. King Lear took an odd approach to estate planning. He was more interested of hearing his name praised than of adequately managing the disposition of his lands, so he decided to bequeath the largest portions of his kingdom to whomever of his 3 daughters most effusively declared their love for him. Unfortunately, obsequious deceit is more endearing than candid honesty, and anger born of disappointment breeds tragedy. That's the lesson of Lear, who disowns his most favored daughter, Cordelia, when she fails to acceptably praise him. Instead, he gives his lands to his 2 unscrupulous daughters, and before the end of the play, almost everyone is dead because of it. There is only the slimmest of chances that Nicholas Rostov's decision in this chapter will lead to either a crisis of British royal succession or a great Shakespearean tragedy. But the young man will, as he has so many times before now, face the trial of responding reasonably to a desire denied. In today's chapter, that desire is the capture of a wolf on the hunt. Nicholas doesn't want to be like his father. He doesn't want to be a failure. He wants to prove himself. In this chapter, he needs, more than anything, to catch a wolf to do so. He prays for it. He dreads failure and dwells on his unlucky past. Attentive readers, familiar with his character, can already sense the anger brewing inside of him. When a wolf finally appears, however, it seems as if his luck is changing. The wolf heads right for him. He sets his borzoi upon it. But the wolf escapes, and Rostov despairs, though not for long. Daniel, one of Rostov's huntsmen, ends up trapping the wolf. He and Nicholas then bring the bound and gagged animal before the rest of the party for examination. Things don't end so badly for Nicholas today. He does catch the wolf, albeit with the assistance of his huntsman Daniel. Still, one can easily imagine a poor response to failure on his part. We've seen Rostov, time and again, lose his patience and explode in anger when he doesn't get what he wants. There's a slight change in his character in today's chapter. It's subtle, but it's there. We see it when the wolf appears to have escaped him. His response isn't one of anger, but, rather, despair. That might not seem like much of a change. Despair is still a negative emotion. But he does appear to respond less intensely than usual to his disappointment. It's important that Rostov continue to moderate his response to disappointment. For, as Lear's fool puts it, "He that hath and a little tiny wit, with hey ho, the wind and the rain, must make content with his fortunes fit. Though it rain, it raineth every day." Daily Meditation. Take away thy opinion, And then there is taking away the complaint I have been harmed. Take away the complaint I have been harmed, and the harm is taken away. Marcus Aurelius, The Meditations. All right, that concludes my reading and reflection on chapter 133 of War and Peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow we'll be reading and reflecting on chapter 134. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.